Wish we'd have done better, but we won, so probably a lot to learn from it. And wish we could have played a little better offensively, but we battled. We got down early and then fought back. Good series for half, and then hung in there at the end.
Turning the ball over hurts you, no matter when they come, how they come, where they come. It's going to hurt you to turn the ball over, and it's going to be tough for you to win football games when you do that.
I feel good. This is the opportunity that I've been waiting for. So like I say, once I got that call on Tuesday, I was rejuvenated. My wife even seen it. She was just like, just feel like boulder would just lift it up your back.
It's the loss of Aaron Rodgers to injury definitely hurts, but as a football team, we have to move forward.
Week 6 in the NFL season. Robin, what did we learn? It's time to PANIC in Green Bay. Hey, what's up? Welcome to SI Now. Maggie and Robin here with you.
Don't relax, you mean.
No, don't relax. Panic. Former Pro Bowler, current radio host Tiki Barber here with us, as he always is on Mondays. Reports now Aaron Rodgers broke his right clavicle. Not sure how long he's going to be sidelined, but if history is any indication, in 2013, Rodgers broke his left clavicle. He missed 7 starts. So, Tiki, with Rodgers in, the expectation is Super Bowl or bust. With Rodgers out, what's the new expectation for Green Bay?
I got to find a new Super Bowl team because they were my pick. It was trendy, right? Brett Hundley is okay. He's not going to kill you unless he kills you, but he's not Aaron Rodgers, and he can't make a team that has suffered a ton of injuries. Those 2 tackles, Balaga and Bakhtiari, they can't stay healthy. One head goes down with concussion, others goes down with a hamstring re-injury, and you worry about the savior. And you hate to put that term out there for a football team because it is the ultimate in team sports, the NFL, and really just football in general. But Aaron Rodgers has felt like a savior for this team anytime they've gotten in trouble, whether they play horrible or great. He always figures it out. Now they don't have that. And so their expectation falls off the table because there's just no viable option unless they go get Tony Romo or Colin Kaepernick or someone like that, which I don't think either one of those guys is going to be the difference maker that they need.
Well, let me go to the latter guy, because whenever a quarterback goes down, we know that the story shifts to Kaepernick, and especially in light of him bringing this collusion case against the NFL. To me, I don't know if a situation has been more tailor-made football-wise than what's going on in Green Bay, because Rodgers will be out for so long, and it is a team that otherwise is thought to contend. Do you think there's any chance that they reach out to Kaepernick? Plus, it'd be a great story for the rest of the season, right?
It would be awesome for us if we get to talk about these things on a daily basis and a weekly basis. But I don't know if Colin Kaepernick fits with what they do football-wise. Their scheme is not tricky. It's not gimmicky. And Colin Kaepernick made a lot of his hay, especially when he was going to championships, by being gimmicky and running the ball and things of that nature. Now, Aaron Rodgers does do some of those things, but it's by necessity. It's not by design.
Now, doesn't that go to the question we've had in a lot of these situations, though, where maybe you alter a little bit to get a talent like Kaepernick rather than bring in somebody who's not good to run your system, who you know?
Well, I'll tell you this, because I've obviously been in locker rooms my entire life, and up until a decade ago. It is so hard to go learn a system. I mean, these guys who are doing it on a professional basis, because training camp has been shortened, because they don't have as many OTAs. It takes them 4 weeks in the NFL season to figure out the systems that you're running. Can you imagine a guy just coming in and figuring out exactly what they want to do? Or if they're trying to cater this to Colin Kaepernick, changing it and making everybody else fit what he does? I mean, he'll be a great locker room guy because guys love him in the locker room. I don't care what anyone has to say about Colin Kaepernick. Guys love him. But learning football, at least the way the Green Bay plays it, is not something that's easy.
One more real quick. In any system, who would you rather have, Hundley or Kaepernick?
Probably Kaepernick. But it's hard to say. I mean, you want to trust a kid, right? That's what you drafted him for. It's what you bring him in for the last 3 years, to sit back and learn, and hopefully with first-team reps all week, and feeling the expectation now, not just being a first quarter thrust in. He gets better prepared for it. But it's hard. I mean, really, no matter what you do, it's hard.
Well, it's interesting because they're going to play the Saints next, then they have their bye week, the Packers, and normally you'd say, okay, Saints defense, this could be a good thing to learn on, but no, they come up with these, crazy batted passes against the Lions and a couple pick sixes as well. You mentioned Romo also. That's going to be another sexy name that's out there. If you had your choice, Tiki, between Romo or Kaepernick, Where are you looking?
I definitely Colin Kaepernick. Romo's banged up. I mean, we forget how beat up. He's not young. He's not 29 like Colin Kaepernick. He's 35 years old, and he's coming off a major injury from a couple seasons ago. He hasn't done anything football-wise in well over a year and a half. And I know he played in that one game right at the end. He looked okay, but Tony Romo is fully transitioned into the booth. And could he come back and physically, be serviceable? Yeah, but are you going to take that risk on an aged guy? Probably not. And I don't know if, honestly, Tony Romo wants to do that.
Things looking nice and cushy in the booth, whether Kaepernick battles for the Packers starting job or not. His next opponent will be the NFL itself. Kaepernick has hired lawyer Mark Geragos, who issued this statement in part on Sunday. If the NFL, as well as all professional sports leagues, is to remain a meritocracy, then principled and peaceful political protest, which the owners themselves made great theater imitating weeks ago, should not be punished, and athletes should not be denied employment based on partisan political provocation by the executive branch of our government. Michael McCann is SI's legal expert. He joins us now. Michael, how strong is Kaepernick's case? And also, why file the grievance against the NFL owners now?
Well, Maggie, in terms of the strength of the case, we really don't know. Kaepernick needs some kind of evidence of collusion between teams or between a team and the league. A theory that it's political, a suspicion, an inference, an innuendo, that's not enough. He has to have some kind of tangible proof, whether it's a text message, whether it's a witness statement, whether it's an email, whether it's a written memoranda. There has to be something there in order for it to work for Kaepernick. In terms of the timing, he had 90 days from acquiring evidence to bring forth a collusion claim. So that may be part of the timing in terms of why he's decided to do it now.
You referenced, Michael, the political aspect of it. It was framed partisan political provocation from the executive branch of government. Do you think President Trump's comments, or can they influence this case at all?
Well, they could in an indirect way if the owners have talked to the president and through those conversations have conspired to not sign Colin Kaepernick, then the president would be a relevant figure. But the president merely saying, don't sign Colin Kaepernick, the president's not part of the collective bargaining agreement. He's not a relevant person for purposes of collusion analysis. There are other potential legal aspects to this, but in terms of proving a collusion case, the president himself is not a party to the collective bargaining agreement. But again, if the owners have had conversations either with him or with persons in the White House, and most importantly, there's actual proof of this, then potentially he could become relevant.
Michael, if a team, maybe it's the Packers, signs Colin Kaepernick, does that make his case moot?
It doesn't, Maggie, because he could still argue that he's been victimized by collusion if he has proof. So clearly the Packers wouldn't be one of the teams that he would allege colluded against him, but there are 31 other teams, and we don't know what role those teams might have in Kaepernick's mind as to whether they engaged in any kind of collusion. We haven't yet seen the proof or really the theory of collusion other than very general comments by his attorney. So, no, he can continue to pursue this grievance even if he signs with the Packers this week.
Now, Pro Football Talk reports per an anonymous source that Kaepernick's end goal here is to trigger termination of the current collective bargaining agreement. Is this possible?
It is possible, but really unlikely. So, one, it's hard to show collusion between two teams. But for this to work, he'd have to show multiple teams colluded against him in a clear and convincing way. It's 14 teams is the number. It's almost half the league under Article 17 for a player to bring a case that would potentially risk having the CBA nullified. And even then, under the CBA, this would have to be made clear to the arbitrator that early on that this is what the goal of it is. Now, we don't know if this is just a theory or if Kaepernick's representatives have intimated this to media, but it really comes down to proof. I suppose if he can prove that he had several teams colluding against him, then maybe he could prove that almost half the league did. But even then, whether the Players Association would actually want to go down that path, that has very complicated outcomes in terms of federal antitrust law, the possibility of lockouts. It's not it's not as simple. He can destroy the CBA. It's the aftermath of that and the fallout.
Michael, appreciate your insight as always. I have a feeling this story won't be going away.
I think you're right, Robin.
Meanwhile, it feels like Adrian Peterson was playing with people like me in mind yesterday. I said I thought he was finished. Didn't look like it's Sunday, as he ran for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Cardinals' win over the Buccaneers. Tiki, would you classify this more as a throwback performance for Peterson or a return to form?
I think this was Bruce Arians saying, all right, we got a horse here. Let's just hand it off to him. And they did early. And we saw it, big touchdown run that he had, even though he looked a little gimpy, galloping into the end zone. It wasn't his normal, trucking in, high knee and all those other things that he usually does. But he gave it to him. 26 carries he had, 134 yards. And let's not forget, it was a 45-yarder that was called back. I mean, he could have had almost 200 yards in his debut with the Arizona Cardinals. But I think he said it was a blessing when he came to the Arizona Cardinals. I think he found an old school enough coach in Bruce Arians who, loves to throw the ball downfield. We know his quarterbacks have low completion percentages because they like to throw it, way, way downfield. But the only way to complement that is by to hand it off. And with David Johnson being down, they found now a guy to just hang it off. Now, he's going to use him up, all right? And Bruce Arians is going to use up Adrian Peterson. If he had
whatever's left, if
he had any desires to play in a couple more years, forget that, because Bruce Arians is going to hand it to him early and often. But kudos to him. Kudos for the Cardinals. Really, kudos to the Saints, too, because they jettisoned a back who was dragging on Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, who, by the way, went off for 237 all-purpose yards themselves with Adrian Peterson gone. This trade felt like it was perfect. It actually was perfect for all parties involved.
Made a lot of sense. The Arizona at the Rams next week, which turns out to be a very big game in the NFC West, and then on their bye week. But maybe Martavis Bryant was inspired by Adrian Peterson. Bryant wants a change of scenery as well, reportedly asking the Steelers to trade him. Tiki, should the Steelers grant Bryant this request?
Of course not. This is nowhere near what the Adrian Peterson situation was like. We felt it when Adrian signed with New Orleans. This doesn't really match. Sean Payton doesn't run the ball 20 times a game with one guy. I mean, why does this work? Martavis Bryant is a talented wide receiver. He's just got to realize he spent the last year sitting on his couch because he couldn't control his substance abuse issues. And now he's back. But in order to get in the good graces of an old school quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, you have to be available, consistent, know exactly where you need to be, and then I'll start feeding you. But there's dynamics going on here that are bigger than just give me the ball, Martavis Bryant. Le'Veon Bell needed to get going, which we saw against the Chiefs, 170-something yards rushing. Antonio Brown was having his issues with Big Ben. That relationship, I think, is a little bit more important than Martavis Bryant's relationship. So even if he's disgruntled right now, I don't think it's in the best interest of the Steelers to trade away a valuable asset like Martavis Bryant.
Okay, so just following up there, you mentioned some of the other sort of issues that are lingering a little in Pittsburgh. We're used to seeing them as the model consistency franchise. They beat the Chiefs. They hand the Chiefs their first loss. But does that mean everything is okay?
Oh, no.
In Steelerland?
No.
Okay.
The Chiefs the Steelers ran out to a lead here. It was, 12-3 at one point, and they easily could have and probably should have lost. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown got extraordinarily lucky on a should-have-been picked off. I mean, it was in the kid's hands. Picked off, game-changing interception at the end. It gets tipped into Antonio Brown's hands. Yeah. He goes off for a touchdown. I mean, those type of plays don't happen week in and week out. There are still issues with Big Ben and this receiving core and Pittsburgh in general. But they're finding ways, because they're a veteran, experienced team, to overcome them in the short term.
Now, Jets fans went into the season expecting to tank. They went into this weekend hoping to stay ahead of the Patriots in the AFC East standings. Those hopes were snatched from their hearts after a potentially game-tying touchdown from Austin Seferian-Jenkins was negated on review and ruled a touchback, with officials saying he lost control of the ball and didn't reestablish it until he was out of bounds. Most people seem to disagree with the call, as Jenkins did momentarily bobble the ball but appeared to gather it back before landing. Obviously, this angers Jets fans, confuses others. Yeah. Does it go as far as players wondering how the Patriots keep winding up on the favorable side of these things?
This is a rule. This has been in the rule books forever. If you lose control of the football so there's so many things that happen here, right? So you lose control of the football. And if it fumbles forward, let's say we're on the 25-yard line, and it fumbles forward, and it goes out of bounds, right? It goes back to the point of fumbling. right? That rule changes, though, when you fumble it and you cross the goal line, right? Because you now have moved into the end zone area. Now, when do you recover it? You've already recovered. If you recover it while inbounds in the end zone, it's a touchdown, right? But since it crossed the goal line and it's not recovered until you get out of bounds, it's just like fumbling it out of bounds in the end zone, which is a touchback. So the rule is clear. It just gets misinterpreted all the time.
Isn't the goal line infinity? So once you have possession and you've crossed the goal line, isn't it therefore a touchdown?
But you have to have possession while you're crossing the goal line. The problem was the ball was free as it crossed the
moment.
goal.
So you're saying it's the moment it crossed the goal line.
Exactly. When the ball crossed the goal line, it was not possessed by anyone, right? So in that case, it's a touchback, right? And so he recovers it, and he never hit the ground, but he recovers it, it's out of bounds. So it's a touchback. And it feels like conspiracy theory. I talked to my Jet friends, they're like, oh, the refs sucked. Oh, they cost us this game. No, what cost you this game is that you threw an interception with 35 seconds left in the half, before the half, and Tom Brady took them down, scored a touchdown, tied it up, and then got the ball in the second half, and then scored a touchdown right away. So should have been a 17-7 half. Flipped around was 21-14 on the other side.
Sure,
so.
And the Patriots always make you pay for mistakes. This one, though, I felt like the term lost control was taken a little bit too far. I wouldn't have called that lost control.
Look at it. The ball is free. If you look at the still picture, I mean, forget the fast picture. You look at the still picture, it's not possessed in his grasp. It is floating between his body and his arms, and he does not recover it until he lands after it crosses the goal line and he lands out of bounds. To me, this is clear. But I can see why Jets fans feel like there's conspiracy theory.
No, and I am not a Jets fan, although I do like a good NFL conspiracy, but I'm not a Jets fan.
Look, it's floating.
But he got it back.
But the ball crosses the goal line right now.
Okay.
Right? So it's lost now unless he recovers it himself in the end zone, inbounds, then it can be a touchdown.
One thing I'll say, our colleague Jonathan Jones wrote this morning. It was, he understands the rule, but this might not be the spirit of the rule. And that's it. Okay, toss up for you. Most surprising result from Week 6, because there were a lot of upsets.
It's got to be Atlanta.
Bad loss.
I mean, first of all, you blow a 17-0 halftime lead against the
Where have we
Miami
seen this
Dolphins.
before?
I know, right? Not
too soon?
Not 28-3. Yes, it is too soon. No, it's not too soon because they haven't learned from it. So the more we remind them that winning and losing in the NFL is precious. So there was a lot of things that went wrong in this game in the second half. So give Miami credit for coming out in the second half, scoring a touchdown, right? It's now incumbent upon Atlanta to stop all that momentum, just get a long drive. Even if you don't score a touchdown, kick a field goal or just pin them deep. What do? They go 3 and out and they punt, right? Matt Bosher, their punter, punts. 26-yard punt, right? Special teams, first mistake. It comes back to bite them. They scored a touchdown right away. And on that drive, by the way, there were 2 drive-extending penalties. One was a pass interference. One was a roughing the passer on an interception that gave the Miami Dolphins new life. They score that touchdown. Then Atlanta gets the ball again. They punt again. What happens? Horrible snap by Josh Harris. And Bosher again has to try and scramble, turnover on downs. Miami goes and kicks a field goal. The big issue here is that Atlanta, because of those mistakes on special teams, never got a chance to go score again until the very end of the game when Matt Ryan threw his 6th and tying his touchdown total this year, interception of the season, and they walk out of there with a loss. I mean, to me, it's embarrassing for a team that was supposed to be as good as they are, who went to the Super Bowl last year and had the MVP. They're clearly missing their offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan, as Sark has taken over, and there's just something amiss with this Atlanta team.
Apparently, he was calling plays from the box and as opposed to being on the sideline. Yeah. That will probably change next week. Parity, mediocrity, we're not sure. It's Week 6 of the NFL. Tiki, thank you so much for being here.
I'm going to say mediocrity.
Mediocrity. Yeah, we're all in agreement. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was almost historic, almost. 7 ranked teams lost to unranked teams in Week 7 of college football. That is one shy of the record set in 1936. What a year. 4 of those upsets came in the AP Top 10, so is it pandemonium or Maybe not. Pete Mundo's here to assess the carnage. All right, which upset was the most damaging this weekend?
Washington State by far, because 37-3, it's not one of those one-score losses. When you lose to a bad Cal team, 37-3, that's as ugly as it gets, especially when the non-conference was not any good for Washington State. You look at it, it was Montana State, Boise State, and Nevada. They don't have a great non-conference win to make up for a horrendous loss, which is exactly what they had. So on top of that, you look at the rest of the schedule for them. 2 ranked teams left, Stanford and then at Washington. Basically, the Cougars have to win out to have any chance at all of getting to a college football playoff.
What about Clemson losing to Syracuse? Likely doesn't knock them out of the playoff picture, but is it cause for concern or more of a fluke?
I don't think so, Robin, because we saw last year, this Clemson team loses to Pitt. They win the rest of their games. They win the ACC. They win the national championship. I could see a similar thing happening this year for Clemson. First off, they're going to factor in the Kelly Bryant factor, which is that he left the game with a concussion. He was injured, and we don't know exactly what his status is moving forward. But I think that Clemson loss is more of a fluke than anything else. They can still win the ACC, and whoever wins the ACC, assuming they have one loss, is going to be in the college football playoff. It's the deepest conference in America. So I wouldn't be too concerned just yet if I'm a Clemson fan.
Well, Clemson also catches a break because they're going into their bye week. So Kelly Bryant has a little bit of time to heal. Then they play Georgia Tech, NC State. We'll find out what happens with NC State versus Notre Dame. That's going to be a big one. And then Florida State is really going to be their big test. That happens on November 11th. Okay, which 4 teams now are poised to make the college football playoff as we sit here?
Well, we're sitting here right now, of course. You got Alabama, you have Penn State, the Big Ten champion, whoever that's going to be. I think, of course, the ACC champion is still in good shape. I'm not looking at the AP polls or the rankings or anything like that. And then the Big 12 had a great weekend because there are no undefeated teams in the Pac-12 anymore. So the Big 12, which is always viewed as the 5th of 5 power conferences, is now sitting there with an undefeated TCU. Oklahoma has 1 loss to Iowa State, which was bad, but it was a 1-score loss. They had the win over Ohio State, and they still play TCU. They play Oklahoma State, and also they have a Big 12 championship game. So it was a great weekend for the Big 12. So I think that Big 12 champion, which right now would look like TCU, but whether it's TCU or Oklahoma, either of them are going to get in with 1 loss. So really a good weekend for the Big 12 as well.
Okay, and the Pac-12 obviously would be sitting on the outside of that looking in.
Forget picking 4 teams. I want you to pick 1. Which 1 team is the closest to Alabama?
All right, I'm going to answer this 2 ways. First off, the closest team right now is Georgia. They're kind of Alabama light to me. Great defense, not a great quarterback. Jake Fromm's good, but I'm not convinced Jake Fromm can win you a national championship. But in terms of how that team is built, it's very Alabama-esque. Great running backs. They want to run the ball first and foremost. The quarterback has to just do enough and then rely on the defense as well. The team that can knock off Alabama in a semifinal or a national championship, to me, is Oklahoma. It's set up, think of Johnny Manziel's year. You have a mobile quarterback who's confident, a veteran as well, and you have a defense in Oklahoma that the secondary is the weak part. Alabama wants to run the ball. Oklahoma can stop the run. On top of that, they have a great offensive line, which will help against an Alabama front 7 that's really good. So Oklahoma's the best team to me that could knock them off, but right now the closest gap is Alabama to Georgia.
So you picked 2.
I picked 2. I cheated.
That's quite all right because this was a week when we expected week 7. Not much was going to happen. We had no ranked teams playing each other. Now we can look ahead to next week. You're going to have Michigan and Penn State is going to be a headliner, USC, Notre Dame. Lots of fun stuff happening. Pete Mundo, thank you.
Anytime, guys.
Appreciate it.
Justin Turner hit a walk-off homer to break a 1-1 tie, and in the process put the Cubs in a 2-0 hole against the Dodgers. Both the Cubs and the Yankees now trail their respective series 2-0. Which team, Maggie, has a better chance of coming back?
Neither. No, well, I have to pick one. I'm probably going to say the Chicago Cubs. I mean, not only are they the comeback kids, not just coming back to win that Game 5 against the Nationals in the NLDS. They came back from being down 1-3 in the World Series. They win games when they need to. I know that the rotation was kind of messed up from that NLDS finale. Well, now they have Kyle Hendricks not coming off of his best outing where he gave up 4 runs in 4 innings. But then they have Jake Arrieta going in Game 4. Obviously, Hendricks, before the most recent outing, does have a reputation of coming through in big moments. Arrieta set to become a free agent after the season. This could be the last time pitching for the Cubs. I feel like that's going to give a lot of mojo and motivation to that team, the team that resurrected his career, quite frankly. So if I'm going to pick a team, I'm going to pick the Cubs.
I'm with you on Chicago. The Astros don't make mistakes, and I think for the Yankees, it's a little unfair to ask CC Sabathia to save their season again at this point. So I think the Cubs have a much better chance to come back than the Yankees do against the Astros.
We'll have to see, of course. Baseball tonight, Yankees and Astros in the Bronx. That's going to do it for Robin and I. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time with a whole new slew of headlines and things to talk about. Until then, of course, go to SI.com for all the headlines and all the latest, and you can follow us on Twitter. @SI Now Live is our handle. We'll post clips from the show right there. See you tomorrow.